What is happening, everyone? Welcome to this video. In this video, I'm going to be going over exactly how much money I spent on a recent content trip to Switzerland. So about 2 weeks ago, I was actually basing myself in Barcelona, and one of my friends called me and he was like, dude, do you want to come to Switzerland and road trip for 5 days? So of course I had to book a flight, and within 2 hours I had a flight that was leaving the next day, bound for Zurich. So in Switzerland, my main goal was to shoot this Switzerland FPV film that's playing now. And there's this massive misconception that traveling is this crazy expensive thing that you're supposed to do when you have a bunch of money and you're like retired. But if you do it right, traveling can actually be cheaper than living at home in some cases. I'm constantly getting questions from you guys about how I'm able to travel so much. So I just wanted to break it down and actually show you exactly what I spent on this trip. And I thought Switzerland would be a pretty cool one to do because it's one of the most expensive countries in the world. So it was a bit challenging, but we made it work. I have a super in-depth online course titled The Art of Travel that teaches you everything I know about how to travel cheaply, way more in depth. But for now, here's just a cool little case study. So hopefully you'll learn a bit and then see some of the behind the scenes stuff that goes into making a film like this. All right, without further ado, let's get into it. So the first expense when I went to Switzerland was obviously flights. My flight cost $250 one way. But since flight costs can vary so much depending on where you are in the world, I'm gonna leave that out of the final total. Also, my flight was way more expensive than it should have been because, well, I booked it like literally the day before I took off. But here are some examples of flights that I've found from different places around the world. Going over to the States, I found one from LA for $426, Chicago for $402, and New York for $430. Getting there from Europe is dirt cheap. I found one from Cologne for $78, Paris for $56, and Barcelona for $41. Even Mumbai, India isn't too bad at $587. Next is transportation. We rented a car that actually doubled as a hotel, and the total price of the rental and the gas at the end of the trip was $300 a person. That gets us to accommodation, which, like I said, we literally just slept in the car, which actually kind of sucked for me because I didn't have a blanket or pillow the entire time, and it was like pretty cold. So I would just like put the seat back and put my flannel over on top of me and just curl up and try not to freeze to death. And I know what you're saying, why don't you just buy a blanket or pillow? And the answer is, they don't sell blankets or pillows in Switzerland. It is a fact. No, but honestly, just every time we were in a town, I would forget. And so I'd end up just using my flannel as a blanket again. Sleeping in the car is not only cheap, but it actually allows you to sleep in places that you normally wouldn't. So we're here in the center of Interlaken, Switzerland. We actually slept in a parking garage, basically underneath the city. So we woke up right in downtown. It's actually pretty cool. When we were in Lauterbrunnen, we actually slept right below the waterfall that we wanted to shoot for sunrise, so it was perfect. And you can do that anywhere. You can just park wherever you want to be in the morning. So we just got done droning the waterfall here, and we are now leaving the car and heading to this little coffee shop that has Wi-Fi and outlets. So since we don't have an Airbnb or hotel or anything, we have to charge all of our stuff at like little cafes. Luckily, there's always editing to do and stuff to do on the computer, so it's actually a really nice, slow part of the day. But if you're not like me and you don't want to freeze your ass off in the car, you can rent Airbnbs and hostels for pretty cheap. I found this Airbnb for like $27 a person and this hostel for $34. Next is food. The key here is to eat at grocery stores. I kept it pretty simple and pretty much just ate apples and Nutella and salads every day to really minimize the costs. Here's a quick clip of me walking around a grocery store just looking at different items. So like little things like juice is like 3 francs. All this juice like 6. Some of it's super expensive. Over here is coffee, 9 francs for a bag. Honey is like 6. You'll find random cheap things like the chocolate. So like the cheapest thing in Switzerland is definitely the chocolate. So that's like 80 cents. There's 1 beer for 3 francs. This was one of the rare times that I actually ate at a restaurant. So I caved and instead of eating apples tonight, I had Subway, and this little green turd here cost me almost $14. This is why I usually eat at the supermarkets. Huge mistake. So my total food budget for the entire trip came out to $86. Last but not least, we have activities and extra stuff. So one of the days we took a train from Lauterbrunnen, which is one of the cooler cities that we went to, and we took that train all the way up to this crazy building at the top of this mountain. The name is called Jungfrau Joch, or something like that. And it was really freaking cool. It's normally $240 a person, but we actually had a local friend who worked for the train, and he was able to get us tickets for $75 a person. So we just got to what's called the top of Europe. Right now we're going out to an ice plateau. Try and get some drone action in. I understand that not everyone has a homie hookup everywhere, but specifically this video is a case study for our trip. And we definitely wouldn't have done the train if it wasn't for our friend. The other extra thing we splurged on was my favorite memory from the trip. My friend Ryan found this really epic mountain hut near the eastern side of the country, near Appenzell. And to get to the hut, you have to take a gondola and then hike an extra hour just to get to the place. And because of the extra effort that it takes to get there, these huts are actually pretty cheap. The one we specifically stayed at is called Berghaus Schäfer, and it was incredible. But you can find these huts all over the country. I've stayed in one in France, I've stayed in one in Austria, and you basically just have to look for mountain huts around the towns that you're wanting to stay. It requires a little bit of preparation because you need to actually find them, but it's actually a really good hack if you're willing to hike a little bit to find cheap accommodation in some of the most beautiful spots in the world. So the gondola to the base of the hike was $31, and then it cost $45 a person to stay at the hut. And the sunset was... So, in total for this entire Switzerland adventure, here is what we came up with. The car and gas was $300, food was $86, the train cost $75, gondola $31, the mountain hut Schäfer cost $45, and then random miscellaneous things that were on my credit card statement, but I couldn't understand, added up to about $21, bringing the total to $558 for 5 days in one of the most expensive countries in the world. So that's it. If you're willing to make a couple sacrifices, if you're willing to sleep in the car, if you're willing to eat at a grocery store, you can even make Switzerland an affordable country to travel to. And we didn't make any sacrifices on places. We saw all the places that we wanted to, and even more just because we were driving around so much, and we could just pull off to the side of the road all over the place and stop wherever we wanted. For those of you watching on YouTube, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, you'll probably enjoy the content in my Art of Travel course. I just get really into depth about all the aspects of travel. So if you're interested in that, click the link below. If not, totally fine. Really appreciate you watching, and I'll see you in the next video.